All right, man. And we are here. Guys, we have a lot to talk about. This is going to be a pretty exciting stream. I am pumped for all the changes that just dropped. Now, if you are one of the beautiful people that are going to the WTC or the World Teams Championship, then you're not going to notice any of these changes. Oh, we got a background, and it is fixed. Sorry about that. So you're not going to see any of these changes at the World Teams Championship coming up in just a few weeks. I can't believe it's coming this soon because the rules lock has already occurred for that event. But for everything else, guys, this is in play, and we are going to have good games. Oh, geez, sorry. I had the wrong things pulled up. All right, now you can see my screen. That's on the correct page here. Freaking mirroring the page. I'm a Warhammer player, not a techno genius. Trust me on this. So let's get through some of these things, and we're going to talk about some of the cool stuff that has dropped, some of the things that has changed. There was a lot of perceived updates. So when you look at all of them, it looks like it's a ton. It's not really quite as much as you might actually imagine. There were a few changes. We do actually, and this is true, whoever just, United Wargamer has mentioned that drop pods are alive and well, and we do have drop pods. So if you're a drop pod enjoyer, well, you're welcome. You get to enjoy the new drop pods, and you can charge out of them now. You're no longer. You can now put your Tacticus Marines in the drop pods, so that's pretty cool. So let's just go ahead and get started. I'm just going to go ahead and start with. I don't care about the errata for the Agents of the Imperium. Sorry for all my Agents of the Imperium enjoyers. We're just gonna slide right past that one and just not worry about it. Let's start with the Codex errata for the Tal Empire. Basically, it's not much of a difference. They just updated one little red line here that says during the 3rd, 4th, and 5th battle rounds for the Kalyan. And that was the Kalyan, if you guys don't know, is what gets you sustained hits 1 now, and it will also get you ignore all modifiers. So Tal have that interesting things in their errata. Nothing else happened. So I'll just go through some of these minor changes, and then I'll talk about the big changes, one of which is a couple of the core stratagems dramatically changed, and one detachment got completely obliterated. If you guys know which detachment got obliterated, let me know down below, but I'm gonna tell you about it. So we're just going to quickly go through these FAQs and erratas, and then I'll do the bigger ones. So Space Wolves, basically they're going to be tournament legal. We do have some changes. We've got a couple updates to the errata. So the Space Wolf model, who has the Wolf Touch enhancement, this is the thing that used to allow him to attach to a Wolf and Dreadnought, or even a Murderfang, for example, which was a really dumb interaction that also technically broke the game, so no one ever did it because it didn't technically work. It has been clarified that this only works on Wolf and infantry units. So for all the people in my streams that were telling me I was stupid for reading the way I read it, I wasn't. It has now been updated to say infantry to make sure people don't play it the way others very correctly interpreted it to be. All right, cheers. Now, Logan Grimnar, they also nerfed his Vect Aura, which I found interesting. So it's not cumulative with any other rules that increase the CP cost of that stratagem. It's kind of interesting that they added that in there. I wasn't really expecting that. Oh, maybe I can make this page a little bit bigger for you guys. Sorry, that might be a little hard to read. Let's just do this. There we go. Make that a little easier for you guys to read. Then Iron Priest, you only get to select one ranged weapon to get rapid fire. So previously, the Iron Priest would give rapid fire to the unit. Only selecting one ranged weapon to get rapid fire is a lot less exciting, but yeah, it's still okay. And then you've got the Wolfguard Head Takers, and you can mark your prey with them even if they're marked in transport, which just freaking makes sense. So total reasonable cleanups for those things. I think it's totally good. Magic K, he wanted to know if they reverted the orc points. Sorry, Bay. No, they did not. They did not, which is silly. Matt, I actually agree. I don't think the Iron Priest needed this nerf. But although then it was very swiftly fixed, followed up by United Wargamer. Iron Priest with Desolation Impulsor sounded crazy. Okay, well, damn, that was a good argument. fair play, United Wargamer. Okay, next errata that we're going to talk about, we're just going to do Orcs. Orcs had the most impactful errata of anyone. Just kidding, it's basically useless. Now the Big Mech also allows you to automatically pass Desperate Escape Test. So the Big Mech is just the leader that allows you to move through models, terrain, stuff like that. Basically, it gives you freedom of movement, which is useful. I know a lot of people swear by it. I've never really enjoyed it, to be honest with you. I played him a few times. I'd much rather do like a War Boss and a Pain Boy, but it is good. It's useful. I know people definitely like it. But now you can ignore Desperate Escape Test, which I don't really think helps all that much. So, and that's the only errata they got. So, Orcs were not... Nope, sorry. Sorry, Orc players. Thousand Suns. All right, so this is actually the big deal. So Thousand Suns got massive changes. They actually got dramatic changes. And if you were playing the the mutants, or the Warp Meld Pact or whatever, the one where you got to play all your mutants, you're not happy anymore because your detachment was just murdered. It was gamey, and it had the ability to just kind of break the game. So I'm glad they cleaned up some of the language on it, but it just got obliterated. So Warp Meld Pact, which is the detachment rule. Each time an enemy unit is selected to shoot or fight, and one or more Tzeentch mutant infantry or Tzeentch mutant mounted units from your army are selected as a target of one or more of those attacks, you can choose to suffer D3 mortal wounds and be -1 from the wound roll. Now, you used to be able to do this on Mutalith Vortex Beast, and it was very good on Mutalith Vortex Beast. I don't think it was breaking the game, but it was very strong on Mutalith Vortex Beast. And you also be able to do it on Chaos Spawn as well. So now you can only do it on the mounted and the infantry, which is, a buff to their defensiveness, but it's a much less impactful buff to the defensiveness than what they used to have. So I think that kind of just puts a nail in the coffin for this detachment, which is unfortunate because it is a really cool detachment. Yeah, that's a little lame. Infernal Master, he gets a pistol on his actual pistol, so there you have it. You did get Chaos Rhinos back, so all you Tzeentch players out there who have been complaining about Rhinos not having firing deck, you now have firing deck too. I'm happy for you. Bless you. You have firing deck too. Then the Vortex Beast Immaterial Flare ability. They did nerf this as well. This is the ability for the Mutalith Vortex Beast to give +1 to the casting roll for all your Tzeentch player or all your Thousand Sun players. Well, it's no longer cumulative with any other modifiers. So if you have Magnus, for example, who gets +2 to cast, he does not get the +1 to cast from the Mutalith Vortex Beast as well. So I don't think it changes a whole lot, but there's going to be times where it matters. So that is a little bit of a nerf. And then lastly, they got one FAQ, which actually does change something in a very, very positive light. So it's not all doom and gloom to Suns players, because this is actually kind of cool. While using the Rubrique Phalanx detachment, if I attach a character to a unit selected using the Risen Rubrique enhancement, does that character also gain the Infiltrator's ability? Now, this is actually very cool because this will allow you, if I'm not mistaken, to actually attach a T-Sun Sorcerer to a unit of, what do you call them? Scarab Cult Terminators. Let me just check on that to make sure I'm not full of nonsense. Hopefully you can't see this part of my screen now. I'm just looking this up for just a second to make sure I'm not talking out of my butt, because I don't think I am, but it's possible. Rubrique Phalanx. And then I'll just read it one more time. Prison Rubrique. At the start of the declared formation steps, select either 2 Rubrique battle line. Yeah, okay. So now what you can do is you can either have a character attached to, Rubrique and use the Infiltrator ability, or what you can do is you can actually have a Sorcerer in Terminator armor leading your Scarab Cult Terminators and give them Infiltrate. This is actually a very, very, very fascinating and interesting ability. Like, if you can have a big unit of freaking Scarab Cult Terminators infiltrating, it's just set up in the perfect position turn 1, that might make this detachment super, super fascinating. So if you're a T-Suns player, then that's interesting. I actually think that's really, really cool. Now, you did get screwed on the Warp Meld stuff, but I think that's a really, really cool buff to make a detachment that a lot of people have been overlooking seem significantly better to me. So anyway, I found that very, very fascinating. All right, so that was T-Suns. That was one of the big ones. Dark Angels, they had a little update that is going to mean that you can no longer use the charge strat to get out of engagement with someone, which I guess people were making an argument for that, so no big deal on that. World Eaters got a few changes. Actually, these were relatively significant. One is the Summoned by Slaughter stratagem. So this enhancement, this is actually a big deal, and I got to talk about this one quite a bit, so just bear with me here for a second. Summoned by Slaughter stratagem. This is the one where you summon in Bloodletters after you kill a unit on the battlefield, and they can drop basically anywhere on the battlefield. There is now a restriction. You do have to come 6 inches or more away from all enemy units, whereas previously you just had to be not within engagement range. So that is a fairly significant nerf to the stratagem. Still one of the best stratagems in the game, to be clear. And it's also kind of a buff. So for those of you who weren't aware of the conversation, here's where everyone was, okay? Technically, according to core rules, you cannot charge unless you are within 12 inches of a unit at the start of the charge phase. So what people were ruling, especially in the WTC and other places, is that if you summoned Bloodletters down in the charge phase, they were not eligible to charge simply because they didn't start on the board within 12 inches of an eligible enemy unit. Similarly, they were also trying to argue that you couldn't use your Dark Angel stratagem to charge at the end of your opponent's charge phase, unless you started within 12 inches of the unit that you were trying to charge. So there has been an update to the core rules, which I'm going to go through in just a moment, that has changed that. So no longer, now it's just like, if you can charge, you can charge. So you come down with 6 inches, you can charge here. So if that was an issue that you were concerned about, it is no longer an issue. Enjoy your awesome stratagem. So that was a pretty big change. Then just some wording changes on the icon of Khorne. If the unit bearers contain 1 or more, each time you destroy an enemy unit, you gain a bloodshed point. Then you can use that to be extra blood rolls. Then a couple FAQs for you guys here. I need to move my picture so you guys can actually see this. Oh my gosh, I have 2 pictures. How cool! I don't need 2 pictures. Let's just delete this one. Nice. I could have 2 pictures, but I don't think I need them. All right, here we go. So FAQs, can a World Eater's Hellbrute Frenzy ability trigger more than once per phase? Yes, this has always been the case in 10th edition. Every time this type of rule has shown up, it's always been true. It was true for the Death Company Dreadnought before the Codex for Blood Angels as well. This has always been true. Can a World Eater's Hellbrute Frenzy ability allow it to fight and therefore pile in when it is not within engagement range? And the answer to that is no, unless it is the fight phase, and it would be able to end a pile-in move within engagement range of 1 or more enemy units. So basically what this says is you still have to follow the typical rules for the fight phase. You're only eligible to pile in if you're already in engagement or if you had charged this turn. So if you had charged this turn, you will be eligible to pile in, or if you started in engagement, you will be eligible to pile in. Okay, so those are the only times when you get to pile in. Can a World Eater's Hellbrute Frenzy ability allow it to fight in the shooting phase and shoot in the fighting phase? Once again, a yes, but it must have 1 or more eligible targets to be able to do so. In most cases, this will mean it cannot shoot in the fight phase, as it does not benefit from the big guns never tire rule in the fight phase. However, this does mean that if you are, but the way I'm reading this right now, if you're shot while you're in engagement, you can actually fight in your opponent's shooting phase, which is kind of crazy. So don't ever be shooting Hellbrutes while they're engaged in melee. That seems like a really good way to just lose your life. Brutal. And then if a World Eater's Hellbrute Frenzy ability is triggered, can I still select that unit to shoot or fight the phase? Yes, obviously. That's actually very good. Because previously what people would do is people would use a combat interrupt to stop you from fighting, so your fight back would count as your fight. So now that doesn't happen, so you fight, someone hits you back, you get to fight. It doesn't matter if they interrupt on you or not. While using the Khorne Demon Skin Detachment, can I select a character with a Disciple of Khorne enhancement to be my Warlord? The answer is no. All right, so actually pretty significant changes for the World Eaters as well. The stratagem that allows you to summon Bloodletters in has become both worse and better, I guess. So that's pretty cool. And the Hellbrute has been cleaned up, so no more arguments about that silly frenzy stuff. All right, let's look at Tyranids. Tyranids didn't get much, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly. Yeah, basically Subterranean Assault Detachment. Target 1 Tyranids unit from your army that is wholly within 9 inches of 1 or more of your tunnel markers and not within engagement range. So this was the stratagem that would allow them to uppy downy. Well, now you can't uppy downy if you're within engagement range. So it just makes it the same as basically every other strat in the game that does this, or ability in the game that does this. And then lastly, we have an FAQ here. While using the Subterranean Assault Detachment, does a Moloch's Terror from the Deep ability trigger when arriving via a tunnel marker? Now, this is really important because what people were doing is they were running 2 to 3 of these freaking Molochs, and these guys were just uppy downing every single turn, or they were teleporting every single turn, or one of the other 12 million ways you can teleport in this attachment, and they were causing their mortals every single time. But now that no longer works. It no longer operates. So when you're arriving via one of the tunnel markers, it does not count for their big mortal wound bubble that they deal, which I have mixed feelings about. Like, I think I understand why they nerfed it, because they just didn't want that mechanism in the game, but I don't think it would have been too strong. Perhaps I'm wrong. Those are my feelings. What are your feelings? I'm actually, let's see if anyone has any feelings on that. In Emperor Mintoff, there's a typo, the transport reimbursement. Yeah, there is actually. Well, I'll get to that in just a moment. It's actually pretty funny. All right, Codex FAQs and errata, the Chaos Knights. All right, or Chaos Knights, basically no real change. It just means that until the end of the phase, each time the model makes a normal, advance, or fall back or charge move, it can move through models. So the strat that lets them move through models, it just means that you can't end an engagement range unless you made a charge move, which is exactly the way it worked anyway. So anyway, just a little clarification there. Eldar. Seer Council. Target 1 Astra. So Seer Council, the unshrouded truth from your army that has not been selected to move this phase and was not set up on the battlefield this phase and is within 9 inches. So the reason they had to add this, a lot of people might think it's silly for them to add this in, for them to be selected for this ability. It's not silly simply because when you end a normal move or when you're set up on the battlefield, you count as having made a normal move, but you haven't technically made a normal move. It's one of the dumb wordings for rules in 10th edition, although I do think 10th edition is by far the best edition of Warhammer ever. It's just one of the really dumb ways they chose to word things in the game that it can cause problems. So they just decided to fix it here by saying that you can't be set up on the battlefield this phase. So I think it's a good change, even though people might think it's silly. And some FAQs. When using the Akarn's ethereal form ability, can I choose for it to regain fewer lost wounds than the D3 roll generated? That's pretty funny. So I guess people were trying to say, if I roll a 2 to regenerate wounds, but that would put me at full strength, and I don't want to be at full health because I still want to be injured so I can still fight first in the Inari detachment, can I take less wounds? So the answer is no. If an Aspect Warriors unit with a unused Aspect Shrine tokens is destroyed, do characters that were attached to that unit keep those Aspect Shrine tokens? The answer is no, because it's a very different unit. And then the others is Torque of Mordecai, which I don't think that really changes anything. Okay. Immeasurable Varix. What about the Blood Angels? Do the chaplains and DC squads get their rerolls? Almost certainly no. I didn't see any update that would allow that. Unless there is a update I did not see. I do not believe that is the case. So no. That's Eldar. Then we only have like a couple more erratas, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of everything. So Chaos Space Marines. Cabal of Chaos Detachment, touched by Warp Enhancement. Heretic Astartes model, this is an enhancement that would give a character the Psyker keyword, just so you can proc some of the stratagems and stuff for the detachment. But you can't give it to a Khorne model, which is totally freaking reasonable. And then one FAQ. If I use the Cults of the Dark Gods rule to add Plague Marines to my Chaos Space Marines army, does the Plague Marines infused with the power blessings of Nurgle ability have any effect? And the answer is no. Now this is awesome, and any of you guys who play the game should be happy about this, because what people were trying to argue is that if you're playing Chaos Space Marines, you could take Plague Marines and they would get an affliction bonus. And since they have the affliction, their ability is to shoot someone and give them the affliction bonus, they could just shoot someone, give them -1 toughness and -1 to their armor save, and just stack that with everything else that Chaos Space Marines get. And they can't do that because it's a stupid things people were arguing for. And it's good that they can't do that because Death Guard stuff is already busted. So that's good. All right. Chaos Space Marines, Astra Militarum. I didn't think there was anything significant here. No, they're just some things for the reinforcement. The reinforcement stratagem cannot be. This is the thing that allows you to return a full unit back to the battlefield once per game in the combined arms detachment. So people are using this on things like 20-man blob of Kriegsmen, for example. Once per game, you can spend 2 CP and bring them back to life. Well, you can't use it if they're battle shocked. That makes sense. If a unit contains 2 models equipped with a Voxcaster, so Voxcaster is like if you use a stratagem on a unit on a 5-up, you refund the CP. They're asking if you can try to refund it twice if you have 2 Voxcasters, and the answer is no. I think that's a reasonable question. I'm glad they clarified it. And can I attempt to generate 1 command point from a unit containing a Voxcaster when targeting that unit with a reinforcement stratagem? The answer is also no. I'm glad they clarified that as well. And this is because that unit no longer exists. You're replacing it with a new unit. So, so it makes sense that you can't use it. All right, so that's all we had for the Astra Militarum. I think we just have Necrons and Emperor's Children, and then I'll go through the big hitters. Necrons. Can a Cryptothal that has used its systematic vigor ability to fight on death later fight again if returned to a unit before that unit is selected to fight? This actually matters, believe it or not, because you have ways of resurrecting those Cryptothralls. So this actually matters quite a bit. So let's say someone charges you and they start attacking you, and you take the wounds on the Cryptothrall. The Cryptothrall dies, fights on death. Well, If it's a Waking Dynasty, when the attacks are resolved, you can then use 1 CP to activate your reanimation protocols, which can bring that Crypto Thrall back to life. Now the Crypto Thrall gets to fight. So you can have double fighting Crypto Thralls, which is cool. I don't think it really is very game changing. It would have been much more annoying previously in the edition, but right now it's just kind of a cool thing that they can do. Right? Just be aware, Crypto Thralls can technically fight twice, which is interesting. And then I think the last one we have here is the Emperor's Children. All right, Emperor's Children. While using the Carnival of Excess Detachments for the purposes of the Demonic Empowerment rule, if my unit already has a weapon with sustained hits, for the example, Shalaxi Hellbane's Profanous Lash, which has sustained hits 3, does an unmodified hit roll of 5 up for such a unit, score a critical hit? And the answer is yes. Yeah, you'll get critical hits on 5s. Now, don't worry about this because you can't take Shalaxi in that detachment, but so it's okay. So basically, any critical hits will be 5s. All right, so that's all of the FAQs. Now let's talk about the core rule changes that we got. This is the core rule commentary stuff, so I'm just going to open that in a new tab as well. Now there are a few here. I'm not going to read I'm going to read all the changes because they're highlighted in red, so we're going to hit them. So I'm just going to scroll here. So if you guys get vertigo watching the screen, close your eyes for a moment. All right, charge phase, second paragraph. This is one of the big changes I was talking about earlier with relations to the World Eaters units. A unit is eligible to charge if it is within 12 inches of one or more enemy units in your charge phase, unless any of the following apply. So basically, previously, like I said, you weren't eligible to actually charge if you didn't start within 12 inches, but now you can charge. So yeah, that's the way it goes. Oh, Mr. Mass Perfect. Listen, man, thanks so much for the super chat. Hope you enjoyed your vacation. Guys, I had an amazing vacation. It was freaking awesome. We went to the States. We saw fireworks. I took my daughter to the zoo. She got to see a lion. It was dope. We had an absolute blast. I am back in Norway, so if you guys haven't seen much content from me for the last 2 weeks, I was on vacation. I was just working. I was just doing my coaching calls, but I wasn't really pushing much content out there. I did get to go to a GT and represent the Blood Angels, so I got to take first place at a GT, which was pretty sick while I was on vacation. Also turned it into a business trip, which is hilarious. But yeah, so I had a blast on vacation, but I'm excited to get back, start pumping out some more content for you guys. I've got a battle report I need to edit and put up hopefully tonight, probably tomorrow though, because I'm going to be lazy, because I am jet lagged to all crap. But I'm back to content now, which is cool. All right, FAQs. This is a really, really important one. And if you just heard a screech in the background, that was my wife wrestling with a 6-month-old, and it was very cute, so we loved it. So FAQ is right here. When using the Fire Overwatch stratagem, is the selected enemy unit the closest eligible target? Yes, if it is the closest unengaged visible enemy unit. So this is actually a really, really big change to Overwatch. So for example, if you're playing Orcs, because Orcs needed another nerf, trust me, they need to really get grinded into the dirt. Flash Kits, previously when they would Overwatch, the only eligible target was the unit that they were Overwatching, which means they would get their bonus shot. Now that will no longer be true. It'll only be true if they are the closest visible unengaged unit that you're actually overwatching. This also, I think this was actually targeted towards the World Eater's Forge Fiend in particular, because the World Eater's Forge Fiend gets to reroll hit rolls when it's targeting the closest eligible enemy unit. So in Overwatch, they were always getting to reroll and fish for those 6s, which made them an incredible Overwatch unit. So I think this was changed now. That's why they added this in. So Forge Fiends will only get to reroll against you if you're also the closest target in Overwatch, which I think is a dumb change because it just isn't the rules, the way the rules are. But I guess the rules are different now, so there you have it. Bum. All right. Oh, geez. Sorry, I closed it. There's a lot more. Let me reopen that. Sorry for the little tease there. There's not tons more, but there's a little bit more. That's actually very profound to the game, guys. So if you need to replay that explanation for the Overwatch, make sure you check that out because it actually does make a pretty big difference. There's a few other changes here. Where are you? There's one to the way transports works, but doesn't really change the way transports works, but it changes the way it was worded because people were making arguments. Emperor Mintoff, if you're here, would you mind typing the page that it was on? Because I know you know. Oh, here it is. Never mind. I got it. All right, cool. So this one is a vehicles with bases. Maybe I should make the type a little bit bigger for you guys. Here. Let's see if I can. If I could just do this, actually, this will work. Can you guys still see that? Yeah, there we go. All right. When measuring to and from vehicles with bases, excluding aircraft and walkers, always measure to and from the closest part of the model for all rules purposes, with following exceptions. A unit can embark within a friendly transport with a base after that unit ends a normal, advance, or fallback move within 3 inches horizontally and 5 inches vertically to any part of that transport. So typically, the way people were arguing is that you had to always be within inches of the base, but now they've clarified that you can always embark within 3 inches of anywhere on the transport, even if it has a base. So there you have it. Huzzah! The changes. I believe that's going to be the majority of the changes. There might be one more here that I forgot, so let's just scroll to the end of the document. And then we'll get into some of the detachment things. Okay, so that was the last change there. Those were the big changes. There's a couple others. So, for example, there is a Space Marine drop pod, everybody. This is sick. I love it. Like, let's check out this freaking Space Marine drop pod. This bad boy is just freaking cool. He has OC 0. He's got toughness 7, a 3-up save, 8 wounds, leadership 6 up. Designer's note. This is actually a really important note that a lot of people are not going to read. The highlighted portions of this model are the only parts that are considered to make up its hull. Models can be set up or end a move on any part of this model that is not highlighted in red. If any models are on non-highlighted sections of this model when it is destroyed, place those models as close to their original position as possible. So when you disembark, you can disembark on these doors. These doors do not count as the model. So you can disembark on the doors that are on the ground. That actually does matter. It also means that when this thing drops, the doors that are on the ground don't have to be outside of 9 inches of your enemy units. Just the red parts, which is the drop pod itself, has to be outside of 9 inches of enemy units. That's also very important for when you're trying to fit this thing down. Another change for this bad boy is each time a unit disembarks from this model after it's been set up on the battlefield, that unit is still eligible to declare a charge this turn. So if you want to put Blade Guard vets in and go for a 9-inch charge out of a deep striking freaking drop pod, more power to you. I'm probably not doing that, but you might. And then lastly, we have some transport capacity to be talking about. This model has a transport capacity of 12 Adeptus Astartes infantry models. So Tacticus units can go in this now, which is cool, and it cannot transport Centurion, Gravis, Jump Pack, Wolfen, or Terminator models. So what does that mean? Basically, it means maybe you can put some Desolation Marines in it, or Desolation or Devastation. The ones with the super crack missiles. Devastators, Desolators, whatever they are. And then maybe Hellblasters are interesting in this. Like a turn 1 Hellblaster bomb. Maybe? But as one of my dearest friends and our moderator for our lovely Discord, Shetil, has said, basically these changes just means that they get to collect dust next to some other interesting models on the table. But I don't know, there might legit be a time for a drop pod. I'd be interesting to see if people can make that one happen. Drop pod's cool, and they got a new model, so that's neat. Other than that, they just had the stratagems change that we already went through in the FAQs. The chapter approved tournament companion did have one change, if I remember correctly. Let's go and take a quick look at that. Matt, no, the drop pod can be dropped in turn 1. Yeah. Here, let me just make sure I'm not lying to you, but I'm almost positive I'm not lying to you. We just look at that. Maybe I should have read all the text for you. Sorry. This model can be started up in the battle of reserves and can be set up in the reinforcement step of your first, second, or third movement phase, regardless of mission rules. So the drop pod can come in turn 1. That's its whole thing, right? Yeah. So that's basically its thing. Okay, so we did have one change in the chapter approved, and I think it was just the mission decks. Yeah, this was it. So basically, what they're saying now is this applies specifically to the Cull the Horde secondary. If I destroy the bodyguard unit of an attached unit, that meets the criteria for Cull the Horde, starting strength of 13+, but the leader unit survives. Do I score the victory points for destroying said bodyguard unit? And the answer is, if the bodyguard unit would have had a starting strength of 13+, had it not been part of an attached, then yes, otherwise no. So the example they give you is if you have a unit of 16 accursed cultists and their cultist firebrand leader survives, you're still going to get Cull the Horde because you killed the more than 13 models, the unit that had more than 13 models in it. But let's say you have a 10-man strong cultist mob and a Dark Commune attached to it to make it a 15 squad unit. You would not score the victory points for just killing the 10 cultist mob. You would also have to kill the leader unit. So it basically just means Cold Horde has a few more times when you can actually do it, which I think is pretty good. Yeah. Cool. Ryan Nelson says, you. Bro, here's the deal. You back to you. Peace, my guy. Super happy to have you hanging out. And that's basically going to do it. Like I said, the changes to like the Cabal of Chaos is just they reworded the enhancement that we spoke about. The same thing with the Subterranean Assault. Oh yeah, sorry, the points. So this is a lie. This is ignore these militarum field manuals. All this is they removed the cannot be used for tournament play for the Space Wolves. So basically nothing else changed. If you were expecting to see Death Guard, Chaos Knights, or Imperial Knights get nerfed, nope. No, GW doesn't nerf armies that need to get nerfed. They just nerf orcs. That's the only thing they ever nerf. Orcs get nerfed after 2 weeks. I'm not salty about it. Maybe I'm a little salty about it. But no, basically these are actual points now, so they're no longer just points that are only applied for non-tournament play. So they're approved. And then the balanced data slate, if I'm not mistaken, the only thing they did is they removed the Space Wolves part of it. I think. Yeah, they removed the Space Wolves part of the balanced data slate. That's all they did. So if you're frantically searching and you're like, where's my balanced data slate? Where are my new points? Well, there's no new points, and there's no real balanced data slate. What changed the Demons Index? Bro, I looked through it. I don't know. I couldn't see what changed. I thought maybe they would have reverted the Nurglings change. That gave the Nurglings the 5 invuln. Nope, that's definitely still in there. So I straight up don't know. And I am jet lagged to crap, so I'm not gonna find that one out as well. So James Brother, well, the drop pod has no tactical use. I don't agree with that. The drop pod does have tactical use. Being able to come in turn 1 with shooting units, like you're mentioning now in Furnace Marines, for example, is interesting. Like, you can come in turn 1 with Furnace Marines outside of 9 inches of your opponent, flame something, and then just stand there and get ready to overwatch the crap out of them when they move in their turn 1. There is a purpose to that. So you could also use Hellblasters, whatever. Although I think Hellblasters are still not good enough. Perhaps if you have the Hellblasters with a certain leader, like Azrael's leading them, or if you have a lieutenant with fire discipline with them, they become actually really interesting there because it makes it very easy to deliver them. Stern Guard veterans be very, very easy. Yeah, those things. So there is a purpose to the drop pod. I just don't think it's going to be good enough for you to cut it at like top. But guys, remember, 40K isn't played at the 0.01% top. Like, I keep telling people this. They're like, oh, well, I can't win a GT with my tournament. I'm like, that's you can win you can go 3-2 at any GT with any army in the game except for Imperial agents. So if there's a strategy that isn't 100% optimized, but you use it well, like a drop pod full of Infernus Marines, for example, you're still going to use it well, and it can still do really good things. You can still go 3-2. You can still get 4-1 with things that you don't see Art of War do on stream. That's not a shot at Art of War, by the way. I love those guys, but like, just because they don't run something doesn't mean it's not good. Like, what's your goal? Are you trying to win a super major, or are you trying to play really good 40K? You can do things that might not be the top optimization, especially if you do it well. I played a guy at my GT a few weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago, and he's probably the best player I've ever played in my life, and probably no one knows his name. Shout out to Seth Piper. The guy knew how to play Warhammer. And he had this funky list that you don't see any of the pros running, and he just crushed with it. So, like, if you know how to play your list, it doesn't matter if it's not 100% optimized, basically, is what I'm saying. So, yeah. So, guys, with that, I got to go. I've got another coaching call I'm going to go hop on now. Blessings. I appreciate all of you for hanging out with me on Geeking Out on some Warhammer today. I'm excited. I think some of these changes are really good, and anytime T-Suns get nerfed, it makes me happy. That's not actually true. That was a joke. But, yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. Hopefully, I'll get my battle report edited and up for you guys tonight, but just expect it tomorrow, and then I'll be back with regular content tomorrow. So with that, I'm ending the stream. I appreciate all of you. Have an amazing freaking day. Bye-bye.